Money Heist, a Spanish TV series running from 2017 to 2021. It narrates the story of a group of outcasts who, guided by a mysterious figure called the Professor, attempt to rob the Fábrica Nacional de Moneda y Timbre, the Spanish national mint, blocking the minting process for 11 days and taking hostages in the meantime. The purpose is to make a statement and an act of rebellion against those who detain the power. People went mad for Money Heist. To this day, it's one of the most watched series on Netflix and one of the most watched non-English speaking series of all time. I still remember people claiming it to be the best series of all time, with an original plot and an interesting set of characters. You know where I'm heading to, don't you? I fucking hated it. It was overly dramatic and the female protagonist was a pain in the ass. You know, the classic stereotypical female character, a little rebel who does whatever she wants, even if this means putting everything and everyone in jeopardy for the sake of having a rotten personality. But who isn't in this cast? Maybe Nairobi and some other secondary character, but that's why they're secondary. Not to mention the glorification of a group of people that, behind the motto "fuck the system," got away with almost €1 billion. Please, friends, if you want to change the system, go vote instead. I was rooting for the bad guys, so the police, including the sadistic agent Gandia, all the time. Berlin wasn't charming, Tokyo wasn't cool, Rio wasn't cute. Nope. And despite all these things, I watched every single episode. It was like an accident. The first 2 seasons, 1 season if you count the TV broadcasting, were still tolerable. The last 3 were a waste of time. If Money Heist and I were TV characters, Money Heist would be Toby Flenderson and I will be Michael Scott. I hope this gives you the idea. Okay, now the question comes naturally. 21, what does this have anything to do with books? Nothing, except that this is how I felt while reading A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Everybody loved ACOTAR. For me, it was... Okay, let me be fair. If I was kidnapped in a room with a gun pointed at my head and somebody was threatening me with either you rewatch Money Heist or reread A Court of Thorns and Roses, I'd 100% choose the fairies. Feyre is not as insufferable as Tokyo, so there's that. Also, A Court of Thorns and Roses is not as pretentious as Money Heist wants to be. But first, welcome back to the Regretful Penguin. I'm 21 and as announced, today we dive into the messy world of A Court of Thorns and Roses. A book phenomenon which left me with a huge huh? And despite everything, I also bought the sequel. SJM is getting all my money, yes. I don't know if I'll dive into the other series as well, so for now I'll stick to the courts. Also, today I'm recording with a brand new microphone. I noticed too much popping in the last video, so let's see how it goes this time. I hope it makes a difference. Never as before, is it important to say that this video is a reflection of my own opinions, so please take it with a grain of salt. I know this series has swarms of fans who adore it. I didn't adore it, but it doesn't really matter as long as you're reading something that makes you feel good. I mean, I consciously enjoy trash TV, so who am I to judge? But here we are. I realized I am a bit late to the party because A Court of Thorns and Roses was first published in the US and in the UK in 2015 by Bloomsbury. I have the 2020 paperback version, so the famous one with a red cover and wolf on it. I realized it was a wolf while reading the book, so there's that. There will be spoilers, so if you want to read the book, feel free to skip the video and I will see you next time. Court of Thorns and Roses is meant to be a retelling of The Beauty and the Beast by French author Jean-Marie Le Prince de Beaumont, from which the famous Disney animation is taken. I'm sorry for my French, I'm learning French actually, but the pronunciation is still something obscure for me. A Court of Thorns and Roses is set in the fictional world of Prythian, divided into 2 lands by a parallel called the Wall. It's actually a barrier, so appropriate name. The northern side is inhabited by magical creatures called fairies, Faeries, which are basically fairies but with an unusual spelling. The southern side is where the humans live. Here we met our strong female character, whose name is so obscure to pronounce that even SJM felt appropriate to insert the correct pronunciation. Feyre. And no, it's not another spelling for fairy. I cannot tell you how many times I will mix these two words up. Feyre is hunting in the woods with her bow and arrows because her family is poor and she's in charge of the sustenance of them. Does it sound familiar? Also, Farah's family name is Archeron, so Farah Archeron is an archer who practices archery. So original. So anyway, Farah is in the woods and she wants to catch a deer when she notices that a wolf is also preying on it. This wolf is the size of Jacob Black, more or less, so Farah questions if it's a common wolf or a fairy. But just in case, she shoots at it so that she goes home with a double win. A chunk of meat and fur to sell at the town market. Please keep in mind this detail because we'll need it later. We go home to discover that Farah has two sisters, Nesta, the eldest and insufferable snobby bitch, and Elaine, the youngest. She's just a dumb bitch. Poor thing. They live in a shack with their dad, who is disabled, so Farah is in charge of basically everything, because the only thing her sisters do is complain all the time. But Farah is just doing her duty because she promised her mother to take care of her sisters and never abandon them. At least she has a friend with benefits, so good for her. SJM even provided the info that there's a contraceptive brew for these cases, so great. Anyway, everything changes when a beast attacks the family in their house, screams in caps lock, and says that somebody killed his friend in the woods, and so we discover that this is the friend of Jacob Black, aka Andras. Jacob Black is Andras, whom Farah killed because it was preying on her dinner. According to the treaty between magic and non-magic world, whenever a fairy life is taken, a human needs to succumb. Farah says, okay, let's go outside so you can kill me, but please not in front of my family. When the fairy says, you must die, or you can come and live with me in the fairylands. The book could have been over less than 50 pages, but here we are. Farah leaves with the fairy. I swear I can't. And they both depart for Prithian. They arrive at this court of high fairies, which we later discover it's the spring court, so I guess that's why the book is called A Court of Thorns and Roses, but it's just a guess. The beast transforms back into his original shape, which, in the same fashion of any romantasy or rom-com out there, or even dark romance, is a handsome young man with golden curls, red lips, at least 6'4", who hits his lads at least twice a week and is tan like it's the Jersey Shore. My man is C-bomb, but without going to the gym. The man also wears a mask, which he can't take off. Actually, none of the people in his court can take their masks off. We discover he's called Tamlin and he is a high fae. As far as I understand, the difference between a high fae and a common fairy, or lesser fairy as they call them, is that high faes have more power and can transform. Tamlin lives in his court with Lucian, a fairy of the Autumn Court, and also his bestie, and other fairy servants. Not much time passes until Farah tries to escape from the Spring Court or convince Tamlin to let her return to her family, but she doesn't understand why she is needed there. If she doesn't, why would we? And in fact, the reason why Farah is spared from an atrocious death by hand of Tamlin, and he'd have all the reasons to do it, remains unknown until the very end of the novel. And trust me, the reason is so unnecessarily convoluted that I had to read the passage twice to make something out of it. Tamlin promises that the family is taken care for and also offers Farah to help her learn how to write and read. She's illiterate. This is one of the few pieces of information that is useful later on, but she refuses because I don't trust you. So, to make her staycation more bearable, he opens the gallery in his court and provides the girl with painting supplies, much like the beast opens his library for Belle. And this goes on and on for 20 plus chapters because, yes, in my humble opinion, the action is concentrated at the beginning and at the end of the novel. The pages in between are just an account of extra information that, sorry to say it, didn't need to be watered down like that. In some chapters, literally nothing happens. My paperback is 419 pages long, but it could have been comfortably 300 pages, 250 if I want to be mean. And it would have been the same. I just can't. Okay, that's a lie. One thing happens, but let's put it this way. It didn't keep me on the edge of my seat. So, at some point, there's the so-called Kalamai, which is a spring festival that takes place at the spring court. Tamlin asks Farah to please stay in her room during the festival because it would be dangerous for her. I don't even have to tell you, do I? But why, of course, our strong female character shits on the directive and sneaks out to get a midnight snack? Yeah, right. It takes 0.01 seconds for the other fairies to spot her, but since she's so lucky, she gets saved from another mysterious fairy, described as more beautiful than Tamlin. What's with the thirst, girl? Get some water! We find out that this Kalamai is basically a bacchanal, in which Tamlin gets possessed by dark magic or something and has to mate with one random fairy in order to bring fertility to his lands. What? Why? But then again, I mean, why do I ask myself these questions? I mean, I shouldn't try finding reason in it. But anyway, Lucien finds out that Farah breached the curfew, so does Tamlin, who blocks her on the wall and bites her neck while still being possessed by the magic. She gets horny, goes to bed, good night, I don't even... The next passages are just courting between Farah and Tamlin, so I don't even bother describing them. They, do their things and actually date, when at some point Farah gets sent back to the human world. Before she leaves, Tamlin tells Farah that he loves her, but her awkward ass answers thank you. No, okay, that's not what happens. Instead, she doesn't reply and goes back to her family, who now lives in a big mansion and is well taken care for, so Tamlin didn't lie. It sounds weird, right? For months on end, Farah was mysteriously taken in the spring court for no apparent reason, when out of the blue Tamlin decides to send her back also for no apparent reason other than, you in danger, girl. Well, there's another reason why, which is unofficial and just totally deduced by yours truly. Farah becomes useless to the cause. Yes, because Farah's only purpose, unbeknownst to her, was breaking the course that held Tamlin and his court prisoners. But let's go through it, pay close attention, because the best way I can describe it is convoluted. Okay, so Farah goes back to the spring court to find it in ruins. She finds Alice, her maid, who explains what happened. It all began with war, terrible war. Oh, okay, no, that's another series. There had been a war between fairies and humans before the treaty we talked about at the beginning of the review. The one that implies one human life for one fairy life. The most ruthless general of the King of Hybern, the only island in Prythian, who's called Amarantha, took part in this war and slaughtered many humans and fairies who took their side. But at the same time, Amarantha had a sister, Cleithia, which means sunflower by the way, I thought it was nice to know, who fell in love with a human called Jurian, who, in turn, used her to get information on the fairy strategies, then tortured her and butchered her. So you may guess that Amarantha didn't take it lightly, and may I say rightfully so, and swore hatred to humans. After that, the treaty between humans and fairies was signed, but Amarantha wasn't happy and decided she wanted Prythian for herself, unbeknownst to the King of Hybern. So she went from court to court for a total of 7 courts, which by the way are spring court, summer court, autumn court, winter court. Day court, night court, and dawn court. Yeah, these are the names. So, Amarantha goes from court to court with the promise of more trades between the courts and Hybern. When the Trust of the High Lords of the courts was gained. She invited them to a ball or banquet or something, and then she poured a potion in their wines, which made them powerless, or at least reduced the powers to a bare minimum, so she could take control of the lands. Now she resides in a place called Under the Mountain, which, hint hint, is located under a mountain. But what does this have to do with Tamlin? Tamlin is extra cursed because he decided to be based with Amarantha in the least appropriate way possible, even for a supposed villain. Amarantha's and Tamlin's families knew each other from before the war, and Amarantha had a thing for Tamlin, but he couldn't give a crap about her because she'd been horrible to humans. After the deception, Tamlin sent Lucien to Amarantha to treat for peace, but she refused, so Lucien told her to go fuck herself, and Amarantha, in a very Amarantha fashion, decided to take his eye as souvenir. To make amends for what she'd done to Lucien, she hosted a masquerade to propose peace and lift the spell, in exchange for Tamlin's eggplant. If you know, you know. But Tamlin not only refused, saying that he'd rather wed a human. I mean, we're terrible, so how to blame him for this thing? But no, not happy about stabbing Amarantha like that, he really pushed the envelope by saying that even her beloved sister preferred the company of a human to hers. Bitch. I mean, right in her face. Man, Tamlin woke up and chose violence that day. And violence he got. Amarantha put a countdown on him for the duration of 50 years, which are very, very few years in fairy time, which he could only break in these simple passages. Bear with me, I mean, I'm sorry, it's not my fault, but bear with me. He needed to make a human girl fall in love with him, but not any human girl. He needed a human girl who hated the fairies so much that she would be willing to kill one of them. But not any fairy, it had to be one of Tamlin's friends. So Tamlin sent out some sentinels, including Andras, who got killed by Farah, and that's why Tamlin spared her and proposed to bring her to the Spring Court, where he tried to seduce her and make her fall in love with him, which he did, but she didn't say I love you back, so it didn't count. And in all this, Farah wasn't supposed to find out about it because she needed to fall for Tamlin naturally, let's say. So now Tamlin and Lucien are hostages at Amarantha's den under the mountain. Okay. Jesus. I need a glass of water. Jesus Christ. I need a glass of water. I can't. I'm sorry. Okay, I got my water, so we can go ahead. Okay, this was the spell and how to break it. As I mentioned, it was complicated, and if you ask me, unnecessarily complicated, but I mean, SJM does SJM, so okay. Now, we need to see what our strong female character does. Needless to say, she goes to the mountain to face Amarantha. Amarantha gives her the chance to save Tamlin by either overcoming 3 trials or solving a riddle. The 3 trials are hunting a sandworm, saving Lucien from death by pulling the right lever after solving a riddle. Friendly reminder here that she's illiterate. Kill 3 traitorous fairies, including a Tamlin clone. No way she'd overcome the trials if it wasn't for the fairy who also saved her during the Columbine. Enter Resend, whom I knew from way before reading A Court of Thorns and Roses because people on BookTok or Bookstagram worship him like a god. I guess it's because later in the saga he proves to be a good character, I don't know. I mean, he's okay here, I didn't hate him. We learned that he's basically Amarantha's fuckboy and he hates that, so he offers to heal Farah's wounds after every trial, but in exchange, he wants her periodically at his court. He is the High Lord of the Night Court. Farah overcomes the trials, so Amarantha needs to keep her promise, but she gets away with it by saying, I did say I'd lift the spell, but I didn't say when. Or she promised to lift it immediately only if Farah could solve the alternative riddle. After being slammed all over the place by an angry Amarantha, Farah, almost dying, has an epiphany and solves the initial riddle by saying that the answer is love. So original. So Amarantha loses her powers, Tamlin gains them back and kills her, brutally if I may say. Amarantha is dead, but also Farah is dying, so the fairies decide to save her by making her a high fae. Like, what? So Farah Archeron, the archer, becomes Farah the fairy. Yeah. I'm not saying this is Edward Cullen saving Bella Swan from death by childbirth, but this is Edward Cullen saving Bella Swan from death by childbirth. Jeez, help me, like, I cannot. Now that we've gone through the plot, let's see what, in my opinion, was good and what was bad about A Court of Thorns and Roses. First off, the good things. The map. There's a nice map before the beginning of the novel showing the world of Prithian, which is basically Great Britain and Ireland. Ireland is called Highburn in this case. The wall that divides the fairylands from the mortal lands is evidently the Greenwich Meridian. I can't be the only one seeing it. Other people had the same idea, but I looked up and couldn't find any official source confirming this. Let's call it inspiration. The second good thing of this novel is Rhysand. I really liked Rhysand. I don't worship him like a god, but because he's still a gigantic asshole. But among the fairies, he's the one who bothered me the least. I'm trying to find good things here, okay? Send help. Now on to the bad things. First off, plot holes as big as an open fishnet pattern, plus lazy tricks to fix them. At the beginning of her experience in the magical lands, Farah has the opportunity to accompany Lucien in the woods for patrolling when they encounter a creature called Boggy, I don't know how to pronounce that. This time SJM didn't provide me with a pronunciation, so I go with my speech flow. Lucien tells Farah that she can't give in to the temptations of the Boggy, nor can she look at it, otherwise she'd die. Rightfully, Farah asks, why don't we kill it? And Lucien says that Boggies can't be killed. They return to the palace and meet Tamlin, who leaves as soon as he hears of the Boggy, because he's going to kill it. Sorry, wasn't the Boggy unkillable or something? Suddenly Mr. Tamlin of my ass can kill it because reasons? Jeez, fuck consistency, am I right? Another thing is that Farah, who's the narrator by the way, insists on the impossibility of a fairy to tell lies except for when they lie. We spend pages hearing this rigmarole when the fairies admit that nothing prevents them from lying, so I don't know, I put my hands up at this point. Second bad things. Random facts on the way to the resolution. What bothered me is that many things that happen in the story and that are supposed to be missing pieces of the puzzle, they are basically thrown in the story with no logical consequentiality. For example, at some point they find a fairy who was deprived of his wings by an unknown female figure, which we later find out that is Amarantha. In an act of mercy, Lucien takes his life, and that's it. No mention of Amarantha, no nothing. I don't think there was a clause in the curse which said that Amarantha was unmentionable, but yeah, you are left with this piece of information which doesn't make any sense in that very moment, and is not spoken about for the rest of the novel. Third thing, victim blaming. Another favorite trope of romances, I don't know what's wrong with you. Okay. When Farah returns to the Spring Court after being sent back home, her servant Alice explains the whole situation with Tamlin and the curse and basically blames her for not having told I love you to Tamlin and thus breaking the course. Alice, my dear. I'm not fond of Farah, and I don't really gain anything by defending her, but for fuck's sake, how the fuck was she supposed to know about the curse if the only thing you guys did the whole time was keeping the secret from her? Fourth bad thing, moments of nothing and intimate scenes worthy of Sunday school. Literally. The staycation at the Spring Court is boring as fuck. I don't even find that there's much climax between Tamlin and Farah to justify the length of the chapters. Besides, it was presented as a spicy book, but here there's about one ass scene, and not even as explicit as people claim to be, and some steamy encounters, but other than that I found it pretty mild. Fifth and final bad thing, embarrassing choice of words. Listen, you cannot possibly try to use a serious register and throw something like "my bowels turned watery" twice in the span of 50 pages. It doesn't sound serious, might as well write "I was crapping myself" or "I was shitting myself." "My bowels turned watery" enters the Hall of Shame and wins the Hard-Boiled Egg Burp Award for this book. And that was my review for A Court of Thorns and Roses. It wasn't the worst book I've read this year, hello Credence, but I wouldn't regard it among the best either. It was flawed, I still don't understand the hype, but hey, it's a matter of taste and that's what counts in the end. Also, all this review in which I highlighted the flaws and then I have A Court of Mist and Fury waiting for me on the shelf. As usual, I leave some reviews from Goodreads in the description down below. Let me know down in the comments what you think about A Court of Thorns and Roses, if you've read it or if you're going to read it someday. Thank you so much for your time spent with me today. Be safe and take care of yourself. Ciao!